Do you ever feel like no matter how much you give, there's always more waiting for you? As a teacher, you're not imagining that feeling. Today, we're talking about expectation inflation, that slow climb of responsibilities and pressures that teachers are facing every day. We're talking about what's behind it and how it's impacting us. Let's dive into the well.
Welcome to the Edgewell Podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. Our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow teachers on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information filled with relatable tips, practical discussions, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together.
Let's dip our toe into the well. I mean, this subject is such a big subject that I think it's challenging to even start talking about this. So there's a few things that we need to lay out. So if you're listening to this episode today, as we discuss what it is and just some general things about it, and you're thinking, why aren't they talking about this? Why aren't they talking about that? They missed this. They missed that. You're right. We are going to try to integrate this into the whole season and make it something that we point out, bring up, and we'll do specific episodes on it. And then beyond that, it's just such a wide topic that today we're just introducing it. So when you're wanting more, just know that there's more to come. And it is so all-encompassing. So even just, running through our notes today, I'm having a million, what about this? What about that? We need to talk about this. We need to talk about that. I mean, are you getting that same vibe from this topic? I almost don't even want to start because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. There's just so much to say when it comes to this topic because I feel like it's happening in every area of our lives, not just as teachers. It's a very broad topic, but it's a very real topic. So I think we just need to start with what expectation inflation is, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the steady increase of expectations over time without a proportional increase in time, resources, or support. In economics, inflation means your dollar doesn't go as far. In education, expectation inflation means your energy, time, and maybe your care don't go as far. You're being asked to give more often in ways that aren't seen or supported. This is really tough for teachers. So whether it's academic results, classroom management, parent communication, tech tools, that's a big one, data collection, extracurriculars, or school climate responsibilities, we are expected to do it all, and we're often expected to do it all at once. This is making me think of our calendar episode, which we just did. And, we have to think about all of these things going into our calendar, but it's just too overwhelming. Most of these tasks aren't like things we don't want to do, but when they stack up and they stay stacked up, it becomes overwhelming and just plain too much.
So you're visualizing and thinking about the calendar episode. I am visualizing nature. This super cute green frog falling into this pot, and it's nice water, just like the pond that the frog came from. He's ready for it. He's swimming around. He's living life. And then some human being comes and turns on the pot to min to 1. And the frog is just like, yeah, this is okay. I'm managing. And the frog's body's just getting used to the water and adjusting and kind of maybe ignoring the twinges here and there. But it's such a slow increase in temperature. Human comes in, turns it up. Human comes in, turns it up. Frog adjusts, frog adjusts. But you know what happens is that before you know it, that water is on boil. And you know what that leads to? I mean, that frog is pretty much done for. At that point, there's not a lot the frog can do to kind of accept their fate. I don't know what number listeners are at right now, but the temperature has been turned up. We've adjusted. We've gotten used to. We've accepted. And there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much energy to give. And just like the frog adjusts to the temperature, I think a lot of teachers have adjusted to the expectation inflation and the resource depletion. And we are suffering. The students definitely suffer. The school community suffers as a result. So I think you need to name it to change it. And I think it's something that we need to be self aware of. And that's what I visualize. You visualize the calendar, but I just see that adorable green frog innocently jumping into that pot and ended up boiled. And I don't want to get boiled. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it can be easy to not notice all of the things that are being folded in and added in. And, nothing is being removed, things are just being added. And you're in go mode, so you just keep taking things on and taking things on. And so your awareness can get sort of clouded and you just don't realize it until it's all piled up in front of you and you are overwhelmed.
Right. So I'm just even thinking about the beginning of the year. We get introduced to all the policies that we need to know, all the new ministry mandates that we need to know, curriculums that have shifted and changed. There are pressures around accountability, and we're always scrambling to catch up and to learn the new. Technology shifts and changes. The biggest, brightest, most amazing investment of education becomes passé with a blink of an eye. And a new tool comes along and we are expected to become proficient at it. And sometimes figuring out one small move takes 2 hours. That's frustrating.
Yes.
The training does not necessarily keep up with the pace of the change. No, it doesn't not necessarily. It does not. Full
Yeah.
stop. Let's be real. Okay, I'm getting a little more real this season. There's cultural shifts. We are dealing with the aftermath of some very challenging, I'd say, political times and results of the pandemic. And those ripple effects have put us in situations where we're expected to delve into areas that we've never delved in before. And we're kind of expected to be miracle workers at times. And
On top
so
of everything else.
on
Yes.
top of everything else, right? And then there's also this good teacher myth that exists, this unspoken idea that we are just saying yes to everything and always available and endlessly adaptable. And of course, emotionally unshakable despite everything that we experience and see and go through in a day with our students. And spoiler alert, this is not how it should be, and it's not sustainable. And I'm going to add to that when it comes to the good teacher myth is now there's this added pressure on, let's say, TikTok and on Instagram and on Pinterest, which can be wonderful resources. But when you're doing that, comparison is the thief of all joy, comparison and looking at what other people are doing. Sometimes that can be motivational or inspirational, but sometimes it can be quite deflating if you think that you have to meet that bar and every other bar. So it's, limited amount of resources, limited amount of time in the day, but yet at the same time, increased expectations. I'm wondering if any of this is resonating with our listeners. And by all means, reach out and share some ideas with us. But that's some of the things that we think are contributing to expectation inflation.
Yeah. And I'm telling you right now, it affects the fullness of your well. And when it comes to, us putting our information out there, we talk about productivity, we talk about health. And sometimes these things are just not sustainable because of the expectation inflation. And so we never want to come across as you should do this and you should do that, even though we say you sometimes. So really it's about what works for you. But when we talk about, finding joy at work and being well at work, again, we are talking about within the parameters that you're capable of working in. Like, it's not easy to do any of that when you don't have the resources you need. So it's not about just, oh, I'll just handle this, right? Because it can be just too hard to handle sometimes. And that's because of this expectation inflation and not getting enough of what we need to do the job properly. So let's talk about what expectation inflation is affecting, because it's costing us. And then the price isn't just burnout, it could be disconnection. We could be disconnected from ourselves, from our students, and from maybe even our whole sense of purpose. So here's where the cracks are showing in teacher well-being, in mental exhaustion, anxiety, compassion fatigue, teachers leaving the profession early. And it's not because they don't care about it or have a passion for it, but because they care too much with too little left for themselves. And then, of course, you have your work-life boundaries. The line between work and personal life can be blurred, and just one more thing can turn into an evening or a weekend. And that's our personal time, and we need to use that time for our families, for taking care of ourselves. The list goes on and on.
Right. And I'm going to add to that, when there's a lot of expectation inflation and everyone is experiencing it, sometimes to the same degree, sometimes to varying degrees, depending on how many yeses people are saying, it can create like resentment or pressure within, a school. And so when that happens, you have less people to lean on when you do have help, because people are stretched too thin. Like your support system is also stretched thin. So you lose that. And so that's another impact that can happen, is that it's not just you. Like in a school year, Chelsea, we'll have different people who are going through different things, right? And so a person might need more support, more encouragement, just more help, and everyone will step up to the plate to help. But if everyone is feeling really burnt out, it's harder for that individual who's going for something to reach out and ask. And I'm seeing that that's happening more and more. I'll just share really quickly. We often have shortages now, and that creates a situation where the people that are in the school are having to fill that void a little bit. And that's not ideal. But there are people who are changing what they need to do for themselves because they're worried about people back at school filling voids. So there's this whole dynamic that's happening, and it's really unhealthy.
Yeah, so true. All of the emotions come into play with this.
Sometimes we're in way too deep before we even realize it, just like that frog in the pot. You don't even realize that you're entering that survival mode. So here are some signs that you might be caught in that inflation trap. Perhaps you might be feeling like you're failing, even when you're working hard, like nothing that you're doing is working. Perhaps you're checking things off the list, but it's never getting shorter because you're always having to add to the list. So you're never having that feeling of completion. Maybe you're feeling guilty when you say no, or perhaps you've stopped saying no altogether. Perhaps you're experiencing decision fatigue or an emotional numbness. And maybe you've lost sight of why you became a teacher in the first place, and you're having those questions in your head about why you chose the career that you chose, and you're feeling, was I meant to do this job? If that sounds familiar to you, my guess is that you're not alone, because I know this girl right here, me, often has had these feelings throughout my career.
I think you're going to have all of those feelings throughout your career as a teacher, no matter what environment you're working in. Those are common for a teacher. It's just that, having all of those at the same time, because of all this expectation inflation, can be just way too overwhelming for someone, and cause that disconnect, or, that lack of motivation for long periods of time.
So true. And then back to what we spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, and that is that each of these things that we're saying, we could deconstruct and talk about for another 40 minutes. So this topic is just so broad.
Yeah, and that's what we plan to do over the season. We will pinpoint some topics that are really relatable for teachers and kind of hunker down on those and figure out some strategies on how to alleviate all of the overwhelm that you might be feeling when it comes to certain subjects about this expectation inflation. So let's get into, what do we do now? I mean, this is the part where we're going to pause and reflect. Expectation inflation in teaching, it's not just about being overwhelmed, but it's about, again, that feeling of being pulled in every direction without stopping to ask what actually matters most right now. Like, cut the fluff, right?
Cut the fluff.
We want to shift from doing everything to doing the right things with purpose and intention, which we always mention in the podcast. And that, of course, starts with the awareness. So what are you holding on to? You must be able to relate to this. What are you holding on to because you think you should? What can you release because it's no longer serving you? It's not paying you forward, and maybe it never really did. Or maybe you're just done with it now. So this season, with regard to expectation inflation, we're going to dive into topics like being intentional with your time and energy, choosing what you want to take on and what you don't want to take on. And I know we've touched on that before. We're going to talk about really tuning into what matters most to you, whether it's boundaries, maybe it's creativity. We're going to get into that, rest, connection, maybe with students, with people outside of school. And we're going to talk about making space for honest conversations about what's sustainable in teaching today. So we will have some of those conversations.
And we are also going to dig into specific areas where expectation inflation starts to sneak in. For instance, in digital communication with the constant messages, emails, and pings, and how to set limits to protect your time. With regard to your home life, making sure that you're managing the mental load and showing up at home without running on empty. We're going to talk a little bit about materialism everywhere and, those birthday parties and how every year it just needs to be better and better, and how physical and, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And how physical and mental clutter can make just everything so much more challenging. We're going to talk a little bit about professional learning and choosing PD that is fueling your personal growth and avoiding things that end up making you feel guilty. And we're going to talk a little bit about the visibility and performance culture and really unpack the pressure to always be on and how to show up authentically instead. We're not here to add to your list. We're here to help you edit it. So we're hoping to be able to move forward with clarity, to protect what matters, and to keep asking, what's enough for me and for my students and for this season of teaching?
So for today, let's leave it with 3 simple takeaways because we have so much more to come throughout the season. Takeaway number 1 when it comes to expectation inflation is naming it. That's the first step. You are not imagining this. Expectation inflation is very real and it has real consequences.
Takeaway number 2. You don't have to get everything done all at once. Just because it's important does not mean that it's urgent.
And number 3, you can care deeply and still have limits. Your boundaries don't make you less committed. They make you sustainable. Sustaining that well.
I'm going to add a number 4. We just don't want a frog to hop into the well in that beautiful backyard, in the morning on a beautiful day where it's like only plus 17 and then have it get to plus 41 and have the frog get to almost boiling. We do not want this. It is not sustainable for the frog. This is the well reference.
We want to keep that frog refreshed.
We want to keep the frog refreshed.
Thanks for listening to the EduWell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the EduWell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.